this crash and then collapsed. These are some of the pictures we've been bringing our audience from the Pentagon. We've watched people being treated by first aid personnel there. We have no information yet on casualties, on the number of people who may have been hurt or may have died in this incident, although emergency personnel on the scene have said surely there have been casualties there.
Review special from my
every day, which has now been overrun by local police and by state authorities and by the military itself trying to take care of its own. Is on the phone from Washington. Tony, what can you add to all this?
Yes. Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, Tony, I can.
I think one of the things we need to understand is we've been preparing for this kind of event for nearly a decade. We've had presidential directives. It's a project called Homeland Defense, but quite frankly, what people were most worried about was the use of weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons. While we looked at this scenario, hijacked aircraft flying into buildings back in the 60s, it wasn't the focus of Homeland Defense activity. It wasn't something brought up on the screen of the Vice President's office, which formally is in charge with coordinating this effort.
But Tony,
yes,
could you just turn around and ask somebody to turn it down?
Hold on, please.
Drought. Don't worry about the law. They can't arrest us all. I had to crack.
United Nations and the Sears Tower in Chicago have all been evacuated. Terrorist precautions have been put in effect all across the country. Monuments and museums in Washington, D.C. are closed. All air traffic has been halted nationwide. Here in New York, today's primary elections for mayor have been canceled, and the SEC has been closed. All the financial markets shut down. Subway service in New York is stopped, as well as a number of other commuter bus and train lines. That's the latest.
All right, thank you, Michael, for that report. Let's go to Cindy Hsu. She's been in our newsroom all morning long. She's got an update for us as well. Cindy.
Okay, we're getting more updates on the actual planes involved in these crashes. Number one, American Airlines says it has lost 2 aircraft carrying 156 people. Again, American Airlines, and we had mentioned that the first plane was the American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to LA. We're also hearing from United that it is missing 2 planes. One of them is Flight 93, which was from Newark to San Francisco. Again, United Flight 93 is missing from Newark to San Francisco. We're also getting word from the emergency rooms at NYU Downtown Hospital, and we're hearing that the victims are telling doctors that people were falling off buildings and that they were seeing death all around them. And very quickly, I just want to go over what is closed in the area once again, and that is the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, the GW Bridge, all airports, the Queens Midtown Tunnel in Manhattan, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel in Manhattan, all State Building and all other landmarks. The SEC has closed all financial markets today, and New York City public libraries are closed. And again, we are waiting to hear from American Airlines. A press conference they're supposed to have after 11:30, and they should have a lot to say since it was one of their planes that hit the First World Trade Center. And one other information we're getting from the phone company is do not use the phone unless it is dire emergency, because when
Spa robe for my and last
Disney.
Our military, the Joint Chiefs, the Secretary of Defense and others. What presumably are they doing right now in order to be on top of a situation where you have the Pentagon on fire, New York City in a state of chaos, and every federal building in Washington evacuated?
Well, first of all, we'll be trying to assess what happened. We'll be making sure that the protection posture of our bases worldwide and all of our units out there is raised so that we're able to protect our forces and our family members, and then we'll be looking to provide assistance to wherever such incidents might occur, whatever military capabilities there will be that could be of use will be other agencies of state, local, and federal government who are involved in trying to deal with these tragedies right now. Then beyond that, we'll be waiting for the information to come in about who may have been behind this, and we'll be looking at what measures can be taken to strike and prevent further actions or in punitive retaliation.
Well, speaking of that, General Clark, wouldn't you agree there are very few of the terrorist groups, at least that we're familiar with, who
or in the parking area? And of course, it's possible that what John has just described to us is this coordinated attack, and you just think of the sophistication of this, in which the terrorists would have planted bombs, 2 of them, one under each tower, and then they permitted the planes to fly in first. They had to hijack them first, fly them in, hit the 2 towers, and then after the towers burned a while, blow them up from the bottom.
Yes, and on the other hand, it could simply have been an explosion due to fire, electrical activity, or non-activity within that building. John Oliva, are you with me?
Yes, I am, Nancy.
John, before you sign off, what else can you tell us?
It's just a sight that, like I said before, will remain with me forever. And it appeared that people were trying to help each other get away from the scene as quickly as possible. The police were very orderly and moving the people uptown. They had them running in the streets. They had them moving at a good pace. And it's just a tragedy that I will never forget.
We're told to leave the building, and I think that Bill and Sue, we're going to a live picture here of the Pentagon.
Of the Pentagon, yes. Thank you very much, Michelle.
And Sue, if I could say, while we're looking at these pictures of that helicopter around the Pentagon, we understand that all U.S. officials in the Washington, D.C. area are being moved into protected facilities at this time. The Secret Service sets up hard rooms, is what they're called, in various buildings, and those rooms have their own communication devices, their own ventilation systems to protect the individuals. Of course, there are several within the White House complex itself. We know that the president, of course, is in Florida.
Indeed, he is. And before we go back to Michelle, United Airlines is now confirming that the flight that crashed near Pittsburgh was a United Airlines flight en route from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco, California. Michelle?
Yeah, just to follow up, Germany has suspended trading of all U.S. listed stocks. Other trade is continuing as normal. Stock trading in Toronto, however, halted at 10:45 this morning. We do know that the dollar is continuing to trade on the Forex, and it is down sharply against the yen below the 119 level. Gold has surged in Europe. It went to as high as 290. Gold often seen as a safe haven in times of chaos and trouble. It closed yesterday at 273, a substantial climb. Right now trading at about 280. Mexico is trading. They reopened at 10:55. But what we are seeing across numerous stock exchanges where trading is occurring, stocks are getting hit very hard. For example, TV Azteca is down 16% and Banco America is down 15% as well. And that's just a couple of examples. But that is the situation right now. A number of countries deciding to halt trading, and where it is continuing, you are certainly seeing the markets get hit and reacting to this.
Thank you, Michelle.
Let's go to Maria Bartiromo, who's still at the New York Stock Exchange on the floor there. Maria?
Thank you very much, Bill. I walked outside on Wall Street, and first off, the scene is very dark. It is very, very thick of dust on the floor. There is dust on the floor everywhere, and I was picking up some of the papers, and there are papers, basically debris, that came out of the towers of the World Trade Center, and they're burnt up, some of them with the name Cantor Fitzgerald on them. Of course, Cantor Fitzgerald houses the 105th and 106th floors in one of the towers, so clearly we are waiting to see exactly the fatalities here and what has happened. As I've been mentioning today, I was outside and witnessed 2 two of the explosions. The first explosion when the plane actually went into the second tower. It was, frankly, like a movie scene, unbelievable. It caused everyone on Wall Street to frankly run for their lives, and the debris came at all of us very, very sharply. There was metal flying and papers. I also would point out the plane that was hijacked from Boston to Los Angeles. When you think about how well planned out that was, the amount of fuel was so significant that, of course, would only have accelerated the flames once it did crash into the tower, because it was going from Boston to Los Angeles and was clearly so heavily fueled up. The second explosion that I witnessed when I was outside was basically the collapsing of the second tower. And again, it was a huge thump, a huge noise, and there were crowds everywhere on Wall Street and on Broadway running from the explosion. I, as well, went under the building that is across the street from the New York Stock Exchange, and I basically stayed there with about 20 people. We were just staying in a stairwell across the street from the exchange. We couldn't open our eyes. We were all having a hard time breathing because the air is so thick with this debris and smoke all around us. So again, the scene is very much the way it was about an hour ago. It's very dark. Now, the shot that you're looking at right now is obviously a shot from afar, so you see the smoke and you see the collapsing of the towers. But when you're in the thick of it on Wall Street, it's very dark. It's very cloudy. I can tell you that people who work at the New York Stock Exchange, I am being told, are safe. So if any families are looking for any employees, they are safe, and they are looking for places to hide or secure places away from the Trade Center.
Maria, earlier we were seeing feeds from MSNBC where they were evacuating the west side of Lower Manhattan there. I don't know if you've been outside or not, but can you tell us a little further east there of where the Trade Center complex is, what the scene is like outside?
Yes, I've been outside. I basically, as I mentioned, the sites outside are very dark, very cloudy. Above us, there seem to be clouds.
Are there still a lot of people outside, is what I'm wondering? Yeah.
No, there's no one outside. The whole area has been cleared away by security. Particularly outside the New York Stock Exchange, there's no one. And what there is very, very thick.
What you're hearing, Maria, is tape of the tower collapsing earlier this morning.
Yes, I see that. And at that time, that is when I was outside hearing that as well, when I ran under the building. But right now, it's clearly quieter, and there's very, very thick pieces of dust and white smoke everywhere. The smoke seems to be moving still above us over Wall Street streets.
Maria, I don't want to interrupt you. Scott has some news on casualties at this point.
I do. This is from the Associated Press. A police official speaking on the condition of anonymity says a number of Trade Center casualties are still unknown, but could certainly be in the thousands. And we've seen also New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani say that he expects massive casualties. You would expect nothing less, obviously, in a tragedy like this.
Obviously, and we have all of our people on the ground and covering the story. Bill, I think we're going to go to David, right?
David Faber has been working the phones trying to get a hold of people who work in that area. David?
Yeah, Bill, very hard to get through to a number of people, but the people I have spoken to are concerned mainly for their friends. We all know that we must know people who are in those buildings, in the surrounding area, given the...
and the cell phones are dead. You can't get a hold of it.
It's
so if
very
you're trying to get a hold of your loved ones in Manhattan by cell phone, it's not possible.
It's very difficult, worrisome. And of course, people in the community of Wall Street are all worrying about anybody who was there that they have a relationship with, including, of course, so many of us who know so many people who work in those buildings and the surrounding buildings. I've heard some horrific stories, unfortunately, about Cantor Fitzgerald, the large bond trading firm that has offices in one of the towers, or had offices in one of the towers between the 90th and 102nd floor. They were calling people were calling saying, "Are you all right?" after the plane hit. And they were told, "Yeah, we got to get out, we've got to get out." But the question is, of course, how quickly can you descend 100 flights of stairs in between the second plane hitting the second tower and the ultimate collapse? So a lot of concern, as you might expect, of course, amongst everybody. And certainly given the concentration of Wall Street-related people and employees down there, Sue and Bill, there's
I drive past that every day.
Great concern.
On my way to the NYSE.
Exactly.
No, what's amazing is that area is so condensed. Of course, it's very difficult to get people out of there.
In that.
About rush hour only.
Rush hour, we're talking around 50 to 60.
When you say flights with North America, does it mean that the flight that comes from Vancouver right now cannot come here?
Those decisions are being made right now where planes are going to be routed. So it's not a decision for the airport to make. Flights within North America have been canceled. They have been canceled. That is. So a flight from Vancouver or Sudbury. Nothing. My understanding is at this point, nothing is leaving or arriving at Pearson Airport.
We have seen no other aircraft in the area.
Well, they double timed out and then they marched back. Here's Larry Topper, who's a contractor with the U.S. Army. You were inside on the second floor E-wing, 6th corridor, right?
Yes, I was.
Tell us what that was like.
Well, I was literally watching the TV broadcast of the World Trade Towers crash, and all of a sudden we heard a loud shout to evacuate the building. And some of the folks I was with said they could feel the building shake, and they heard the muffled sound of the explosion. But I neither felt it nor heard it. But I could tell that it wasn't a drill. I knew that it was a serious evacuation, and people immediately dropped what they were doing and began to evacuate the building. And it was fairly controlled chaos, actually. The halls were pretty packed, and we tried to exit in the area of the 5th corridor, but they wouldn't let us do that because they were blocking everybody off, so we had to turn around and go back the other way. And I finally ended up down in the Pentagon's main concourse trying to get out there, but the halls were just packed. There was no sign of panic, but there was a lot of concern on people's faces. You could tell that. I mean, everybody knew it was serious, and everybody was intent on getting out, but there was a lot of cooperation, no pushing and shoving. And I finally exited in the area of the Metro Center, the bus stops, and got away from the building as fast as I could. And as we were going through the A-ring, you could look across the center courtyard to the other side of the building, and you could see the huge billows of black and gray smoke just coming up over the top of the building and across the courtyard and to the over towards Pentagon City. And you could actually smell the smoke in the hallways as we were coming out. It wasn't real thick or anything like that where it was dangerous, but you could smell it in the hallways. You could actually see it, and there was a little bit foggy, more or less, as you're trying to walk through some of the hallways. But I didn't really see the extent of the damage until I came around this side of the building where we're standing now, and I'm facing at the site of the impact.
How far away were you from the impact area?
I was 2 corridors away, so I would just guess maybe, I'm just guessing 200 yards. And I was on a different side of the building. The building, of course, has 5 sides, and I was on the very next side to where the impact was.
Penske Auto Center Speed Lane oil change with the new crew chief service.
Where the kids are, the big kids, the husbands. Look at this. The nice part about that, it gets in the tight areas.
B, C, B, A, D, B, C, B, A, A, B, B, D. Pretty cool, huh?
Pretty cool.
Cataracts are retina damage caused by exposure to the sun. Of the 5 best-selling sunglasses on the market today, not one of them offer the same level of protection as Eagle Eyes Extras.
Stretch it out again. Does that feel good? It's incredible. I felt it in my abs, and I could feel it in the backs of the legs, so it felt like it was a multi-purpose thing. How old are you? 69, going on 70. You look fantastic.
And last but certainly not least on this tray is item AFQ 375-size. This is the Mystic Blue and CZ. Size is 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, and 4.
LAX, we don't know, we haven't confirmed the status of what happened to that airplane, and United 93 Newark to San Francisco believed to be down in Pennsylvania. Jim, have American officials given us any indication on what communications preceded these crashes?
They have not. As you can imagine, there is a lot of concern here. Everywhere you walk, you see American employees looking just absolutely distressed. So the only information they have given us is just this one sheet of paper, which they handed out in a very low-key fashion, describing, in effect, 2 hijacked planes that were crashed today, killing, as I said, 156 people on those planes. They haven't said anything else about, if they had any early indications of this, but presumably, as you pointed out, these planes were definitely, diverted quickly, and so American would have found that out rather soon, I think, earlier this morning, and knew that something terrible was in the works.
All right.
The patented with that unique microprocessor that sends that signal all throughout the house, and the DCM, the digital cycling method. I want to share everybody one more unit, Don, that we were this is kind of amazing. This one runs close to $100, and it's a
to Canada.
They're not taking flights either, would you?
Are you screening passengers?
Remove them from another area, yes. They're being directed to seek either public transportation or their own transportation out of the airport. Leaving the airport? No.
How long do you anticipate the airport to be closed?
It's indefinite at this time. We'll be meeting with the FAA. We'll be conducting an analysis of our intelligence that we have. We'll make a determination later on this afternoon.
What details?
Pardon me? I can just tell you briefly, we have shut down security checkpoints. We've moved everyone away from the boarding gate areas. We've increased police presence dramatically. We've requested additional state police be sent to the airport. And we've shut down some construction activities around the airport.
Is this the highest level of security ever, Joe?
Is another flight from Boston?
I can't confirm or deny that right now.
Is there anything unusual about the boarding procedure?
Logan International Airport has not been hit by any terrorist activity that we know of, other than the fact that one of the flights that was used in the attack on the World Trade Centers originated in Boston and was en route to LA. That was Flight 11, and Emmett has the additional flight numbers of the flights involved in this morning's terrorist attack.
It's so difficult to coordinate, but here we have what we believe to be the final tally on what hit what this morning. The first flight was, as you mentioned, American Airlines Flight 11, and that was going from Boston to Los Angeles, and that hit Tower 1. That was the first plane to hit one of the towers of the World Trade Center. Tower 2 was hit by American Airlines Flight 77 from Dulles to Los Angeles. Both of those planes headed to Los Angeles. Now listen to this. That's the plane that hit Tower 2. Listen to this. United Airlines Flight 175 from Dulles to Los Angeles, we believe, was the plane that hit the Pentagon, the north end of the Pentagon, which has been evacuated. And then the fourth plane to crash, and this one near Camp David in Pennsylvania. United Airlines, Camp David not in Pennsylvania, but this crashed near Camp David. It crashed in Pennsylvania. United Airlines Flight 93, and that was going from Newark to San Francisco.
It certainly does not escape anyone's mind at this point that all of these flights were headed to California. 3 to Los Angeles, 1 to San Francisco. As we look at the Pentagon live, the activity surrounding the Pentagon, much of the activity, of course, now taking place in secured bunkers beneath the city of Washington, in areas that are secure and one would presume safe from terrorist attack and terrorist threat. But there you see the activity outside of the Pentagon this morning with ambulances, fire equipment, and personnel attempting to find their way out of the Pentagon. We have not received any information as to the number of injured or killed in the Pentagon. We've not received any credible figures from the World Trade Center situation. We may not know that number for weeks and weeks and weeks. We will certainly bring you as much information as we can throughout the day. We are going to continue to stay on the air throughout the morning here on KTLA and bring you as much information as we can as you watch, along with the rest of the world, what is happening in New York City and Washington, D.C., and throughout the world, as the world is on heightened alert as a result of a deadly terrorist attack on Manhattan and Washington, D.C. this morning.
We're even getting reports, you mentioned, around the world that some of the other countries are in sympathy with us, certainly, but heightened sympathy. Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed his condolences to the American people about these attacks. He calls them terrible tragedies. Jacques Chirac of France says that this is monstrous, these attacks, and he's expressed solidarity with the American people. And even Yasser Arafat has gotten on the air, a somewhat embattled Yasser Arafat. One cannot know how much he is in actual knowledge of what may have happened here. He's certainly politically stuck in the middle between his people, and we don't know how much help he's actually going to give us in finding who did this.
No, he's come in and out of favor among the terrorist groups, at times siding with them, at times appearing soft to the terrorist groups. And you're right, he's kind of stuck in the middle, but as one terrorist expert put it this morning, he has lost pretty much all of his credibility in the wake of what's happened this morning. And now, I mentioned earlier the effect that this has had on the United States. When you consider that back in 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, it was a surprise attack by a country in an act of war that killed 2,400 sailors and military personnel in the harbor of Pearl in Honolulu. As many as 50,000 or more people could be dead as a result of this attack, but there is no nation to attach to this. So what are President Bush's options here in a terrorist attack? That is the big question at this point. What is President Bush going to do? What will be the response of the United States of America in the wake of such an attack that's really unprecedented in our world history, a terrorist attack not attached to a particular nation? Now, we have these groups that have claimed responsibility, the DFLP, the Islamic Jihad, who are saying that this is as a result of the Mideast policy. Our Mideast expert, our terrorism expert, indicated that this was clearly a way to get a message across. Well, this is a huge message. This is a message of catastrophic proportions that is being sent around the world, and everyone now is paying attention.
Right. And
what the response is what President Bush really, that's we must wrestle with in the next few hours.
Right, it's true. And I mean, what you're saying is absolutely correct. There's no way to know exactly how to put a finger, how to stamp this out. We already thought that we were on alert. We already thought that we were close to this sort of attack and putting up security measures that would stop this from happening. But I think even more immediately for folks at home, it lets us know how vulnerable the sane are to the lunatics, to the people out there who may at any time choose to strike out and strike out at large numbers of people.
Well, 21 years ago today, there was an accord. It was the Camp David Peace Accords. And you can see that it has virtually done nothing to prevent a terrorist attack of this magnitude.
This was the anniversary
today.
then.
Today is the 21st anniversary of the Camp David Peace Accords,
wow.
Which of course was heralded as the beginning of the end of this sort of thing. But of course, who could have imagined the magnitude of this attack? We also understand that, as we indicated to you earlier, President Bush was in Sarasota, Florida this morning, addressing a group of school children on education. He is heading back on Air Force One and heading to an unidentified federal Air Force base, not Camp David.
Not in the Air Force base.
Yeah, and we assume that he's not going back to Washington, D.C. or anywhere near the nation's capital as a result of the threat that is still lingering there in Washington, and as a result of the attack on the Pentagon and other explosions that have happened near the State Department and elsewhere. So at this point, we don't know where the president is going. We don't know even where Vice President Dick Cheney has been evacuated to. As I understand, he was in the West Wing or in the White House at the time of the attack, but that has not been confirmed. So where the nation's leaders are right now, we're not sure. Of course, we're getting now some word from some of the representatives around the country. Chuck Hagel, a Republican from Nebraska, says this is the second, and I'm quoting now, this is the second Pearl Harbor. I don't think that I overstate it. That's a quote. Of course, he's referring to the attack 60 years ago that surprised the nation and plunged the U.S. Into World War II.
Well, certainly people here in Los Angeles are on the edge of their seats, as they are nationwide right now. Here are a few things to give you there before we head to Eric Spillman. L.A. citywide, there's been a tactical alert put on. They're employing anti-terrorist units all over. Of course, LAX has been evacuated and cordoned off. And Chief Parks is going to hold a meeting at 10 a.m. today to decide how to deal with this thing, as well as the schools. The schools will be in session, although there will not be any extracurricular activities.
And we understand that our borders have been closed with Mexico. We're not sure whether the Canadian border has been closed yet. Let's go to Eric Spillman now. Eric?
At police headquarters here this morning, even though there's been no threat here in Los Angeles, nothing's been reported. The city is preparing as if there were an emergency. They want to be ready in case there is an emergency here.
Like a waterfall was coming behind me, about to overtake me. I ran like hundreds of other people ran. When it caught up with me, I froze, but I couldn't see anymore, and I thought that was going to be my problem. Then the smoke and debris was so thick that I thought I couldn't breathe. I took off my hat and I shoved it over my face as long as I could to keep breathing. I thought about my wife and kids, and I thought about heading east to get near the river where the buildings would be lower and there would be more fresh air. And that's what I did with two other guys. And I think we saved each other, and some folks from McDonald's helped out too.
Can you talk about how the countless acts of kindness you saw, people reaching out to each other? You said that there was
I was really worried for 1 minute that I might not make it out. I saw one guy stumbling and I grabbed him and said, come on, we're going to get out of here alive. I saw a third guy. We walked along with locked arms until we saw a sign of a McDonald's building. A guy leaned out to the side and said, come on, in here, quick. He pulled us down into a basement and into a subterranean kitchen. They had water out for us. We washed our faces off, spit the crud out of our lungs, got breathing again. And then, when the smoke cleared a little, went back out into the street to head north and get out of there.
Can you tell us, can you describe what the street scene was like as you were running, once the dust sort of settled, if it did settle at all? Can you describe us what it was like on the street?
It looked what I imagined Hiroshima all this looked like after the atom bomb. Lots of clouds, lots of smoke, lots of dust, people dazed and in shock, stumbling along, trying to find their way home to their loved ones.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I know you've been through a lot today, and we're glad you're okay. If you want to tell your wife and children that you are okay.
I'm okay, and I was thinking of you all the time. You helped me get through.
All right, thank you. A little laughter. A lot of people are just kind of going through so much. Can you take over here now? There's a flood of people that are coming from downtown, walking uptown. A lot of people are just trying to figure out where to go, and that's really the scene here, Jim and Cuddy. A lot of people coming from downtown. When you listen to them, let me just try and get this husband and wife couple over here, if I could. They were also. Can you talk to us, sir, about how you two made it? Obviously, your wife's been through a lot. Can you tell us what it was like down there?
It's just devastating. It's just a travesty.
When it came down, where were you? Where were your wife? What were you thinking?
I was thinking get her. I was trying to get on the telephone, and the building just collapsed. And my only thought was to just get my wife. I'm running. She's running this way, people trampling each other, and there's no way really to describe it unless she was in it. I just feel so sad for everybody. It's just devastating.
Did you see the first explosion? Did you see the second explosion at that point?
I didn't see the first explosion, but I felt it. We in the hotel, I'm thinking, I hear it, I'm like, what's that? I asked my wife, what's that? She said, oh, it's thunder. I said, that's not thunder. I know thunder. That was not thunder. So we look out, like 10 minutes later, here's another explosion. And we look out the hotel, and there's two big gaping holes in the World Trade Center. Just two big holes. And just everything is on flame.
And then at what point did you initially notice it collapsing, and did you make a run for it with your wife?
It didn't collapse right away. They evacuated everything, evacuated the hotels, and everybody got out on the street, and everybody trying to make their way. I would say maybe 10, 15 minutes later, after everybody's evacuated, it comes down. You're standing there outside, and here's this massive building just collapsing in front of you. Now it's just hell break loose. Everybody's in panic mode. Everybody's just trying to run for cover. But you can't outrun no flames. You can't outrun that. So now you just hope you don't choke to death. Hope you don't die in the flames. And it's just sad to be there and involved in that and see it. You see people, the expressions on people's faces is like, I'm going to die. And everybody's just trying to survive at that point. It's just people diving out the building on the 70th floor, just diving out the building. I mean, what are you going to do?
You saw people diving out the building?
Either you're gonna be inflamed, or or you just gotta try to make it at that point. It's just I can't even. It's that. Like my wife, she don't even want to talk about it.
You saw the building?
I'm sorry, sir?
It was like you saw the building, and you turned around, and you didn't see the tower no more. That was the World Trade.
Can you talk to me at all? Can you talk to me? Obviously, you have a mask. You've made it out. Can you tell me what it was like, sir, at all?
Yeah, I just want to, is this being televised right now?
Yeah.
I just want to let my wife know.
Go ahead, yes, go ahead.
Bridget, the last time you saw me, heard from me, I was downstairs at the Marriott. I'm okay, okay? I was in the Marriott at the World Trade Center.
Right. Can you tell me how you got out? I mean, where...
It's a long story.
I know, long and you're tired. Okay, go ahead. I
okay.
totally understand. All right, there are two more people over here as well. Sir, can you tell us? I mean, you obviously walked all the way from downtown. Can you put it into words what you experienced?
Something like you could never imagine. I mean, bad, real bad.
What was it, sir?
Pandemonium.
Can you? Where were you? Can you kind of set the scene
Broadway.
for us? Okay.
And well, we had heard that the first plane hit tower number 1, so we went to take a look at it. Obviously, while we were there, tower number 2 got hit. Total explosion. All 4 sides of the building just blew out.
I'm sorry.
We saw the plane go into the building.
And at that point, were you running?
We ran.
We ran. We ducked out of the way. Debris was flying all through the air. Everybody was running. And then after it settled down, and there was an internal explosion in the building, maybe like 10, 15 minutes later. And like 10 minutes after that, the building came down.
Where did you get this? Were they handing this out to you?
No, we just happened to run into one of the buildings, and one of the guys in the building was giving them out because there was smoke. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face.
Could you breathe? Could you breathe? A lot of people are saying.
No, we couldn't breathe. It was really bad. People walk into the vestibules of buildings just covered in soot, worse than him. It was really disgusting.
It was bad. It was really bad.
All right, can you want to tell your family that you're okay, or?
We called them already.
We called them, but
okay.
we're okay.
Your name?
My name's Rob Royster. To other people that are down there, I hope your family's okay.
Yeah.
It's bad, and we know there are a lot of people hurt.
All right. Our hearts, and of course, a lot of people, as you hear personal testimony about what's going on here, Jim and Kaidi, you can't help but feel a sense of a numbness that goes through your body as you see people describe the waterfall of smoke and trying to escape and the chaos on the street, and our hearts go out to the people who didn't make it out. At this point, it's just devastating to even talk about this. So I'm going to send it back to you and come back to me later on in the show.
This morning, pilots, obviously, we've got to think that the American pilots on board those planes did not fly these planes into the buildings. Obviously, maybe they were taken over by terrorists. Very well planned, very well financed. Where does this country go now with bin Laden, Afghanistan?
Well, and I think you hit on
it. If he's responsible.
I mean, there's going to be an enormous pressure for some kind of reaction to kind of exert our will and our, and force is the way to do that. We often talk about force not being the solution to political problems. It isn't the solution, but often it's the only option. So right now we don't know. We're still kind of sorting through everything to know what occurred. There'll be strong pressure, I think, to have some form of action if there's a clear direction to focus that action. Exactly what it'll be, we're not sure.
We have about 30 seconds. Where is this country right now, and where do you think it'll be in the near future?
Well, I would think that betting on the odds, this will be a enormously traumatic event that we will recover from. It'll be costly in lives, it's costly in pure financial terms, but I don't see it. One of the amazing things about America is when traumatic events occur, chaos does not follow. Yeah. That in fact, we manage to keep things in perspective, and this is going to be a serious challenge to that.
Okay.
Closed indefinitely by Massport, that the airport was closed this morning at around 9:15. It will remain closed indefinitely, as well as several adjacent construction sites that are near the airport. They were closed down immediately. All passengers have been removed from so-called secure areas, and they have been relocated within the airport away from the secure areas. They have brought in additional police. They have beefed up the MBTA and shuttle service to get people people out of the airport. And they have established probably the most important thing is a family assistance area at the Hilton Hotel. And that's for family members of passengers who were on the flight this morning bound to Los Angeles from Boston, the American Airlines Flight 11, that Lawless would not confirm any reports that that flight was involved. He just said that media accounts have talked about it. He speculated that up to 200 people could be on that flight. That's the capacity, although we're hearing numbers are much lower than that, that was one of the flights involved in this morning's explosion at the World Trade Center in New York. Now,
you know, the hospitals all over the city.
And Mayor Giuliani will let you...
in place. They're doing it. We just need the cooperation of people in getting out of there.
We'll let you get back to the operations there, and we do appreciate you taking the time for us here.
But once again, the only thing to do now is to remain calm and try to assist in the rescue effort.
Thank you.
Now let's pray.
All of us.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
I think, Brenda, what the mayor just said there, and pray, is probably one of the more profound things that we ought to all do at this time with America under attack. We do have some more eyewitnesses as to what happened this morning. Let's take a look at that footage now.
After I got to the bridge, it happened like maybe 10 minutes after I got over to GW. And I'm like, man, it's crazy. I mean, everything looked calm.
And all of a sudden, I just kept driving, and I saw smoke both buildings. Once I got on the turnpike, I saw everybody parking on the side, so I did the same. And I was just watching, because for me, it was like a tremendous nightmare. I called my mother and my wife, and I said, there's going to be a war. I bet you there's going to be a war. And then all of a sudden, I see a lot of smoke, but I saw so much smoke, I couldn't believe it. And the first building collapsed.
Wow, I live right over there, and right in Kearny over there, and I've
Obviously, these are people, front eyewitnesses who are on the Jersey side looking toward New York.
It's just incredible. We're sitting in the truck crying. I mean, incredible. Totally incredible.
It's too much to see that the terrorists can have a control on this country. You know, it's just a scary thing. We're only 15 minutes away from the city. You got to be, you know, afraid to go back in there for a time to come until things settle down, honestly.
Everybody's got cameras and driving like maniacs, and I think the whole world is petrified. I know I am.
There you go. I mean,
Incredible
eyewitnesses from the Jersey side looking over there. And in fact, this morning, Brenda, I was on the phone overlooking I was on the Jersey side overlooking the downtown Manhattan area. And I turned away for just a moment, heard an explosion, went back to the window, looked out, and I saw the initial black plume of smoke at the World Trade Center. And then I said to my wife when I was on the phone with at that moment, I said, wow, there's been an explosion at the World Trade Center. I've got to go. I'm going to call the office.
Colin Powell is on his way back from Peru. President Bush, as we understand, may still be in Florida. His is perhaps the only aircraft that is allowed on U.S. territory right now. All airports shut down. Of course, the New York primaries were canceled today. We have Alan Marcus, our political analyst, here with us now. But first, let's listen to President Bush, more comments that he made this morning in Florida when he found out about the terrorist attacks.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
The president was talking to some children in Florida this morning, and then we are told that he was heading back to Washington. Whether he's left yet or not, we don't know. What we do know is that perhaps as many as 5 aircraft were used in these attacks in various parts. 2 certainly into the World Trade Center.
Both those American Airlines flights.
And 2 United planes are apparently down.
And that was number 93, Newark to San Francisco, and number 175, Boston to L.A.
And there may have been another aircraft, either a helicopter or something, into the Pentagon, which caused that explosion.
Right, we just don't know about that one as yet. But Alan Marcus says there could be as many as 8.
There are news reports, Brenda, that there are as many as 8 planes that may have taken place in these various attacks. There are reports that, in fact, one plane south of Pittsburgh was possibly headed for Camp David, and there's another plane near Camp David that is already down. There's been a car bombing reported at the State Department. The White House has been evacuated. America certainly is under attack. It's not just in New York. It goes down to the nation's capital as well.
You know, under attack, you suggested earlier when we were chatting, I'm sorry, Brenda,
That's okay.
This is the first time that attacks have been successful.
Well, if you look at the World Trade Center bombing of 10 years ago, that was a successful attack. But after that, in the early days of the Clinton administration, there were efforts to blow up monuments, tunnels, other infrastructure in New York that were thwarted by the FBI and, I guess, the Central Intelligence
Alan, let me break in for a second. We just had some video here of the plane crash in Pennsylvania, but apparently that's not it there. We'll get back to that as soon as we can. So continue your thought, please.
And at that time, the Clinton administration was praised for its ability to pick up terrorists, to follow them, and to thwart those efforts. Now, however, we see where there have been very, very well organized terrorist attacks against the World Trade Center, against the nation's capital, and we appear not to have a clue as to the origin of these attacks or how much more we can anticipate.
And event choices. You can preview what movie.
Think through logically anymore what they are doing to their bodies for the sake of being thin. Then
I was still with you, the Paraclete, the Holy Spirit, when the Father will send in my name.
It's canceled, covered by the blood. No guilt, no condemnation. Oh, but you say, I feel so unworthy. Well, I'll tell you why you're not unworthy. You're not unworthy because you're in Jesus Christ. And if I ask you, is Jesus worthy? You'd say, oh, yeah, he's worthy. Yeah, oh, yeah, because he lived a sinless life. He's worthy because he died for the sins of the whole world. Yeah, Jesus is worthy. And I'll say to you, you're just as worthy as Jesus. Oh, you've sinned, you've done wrong. I grant you that, but you're in Christ. And if you're in Christ, you're worthy to receive every blessing and benefit he receives. That's why he said, I'm an heir to the throne of God, and you're a joint heir with me.
You don't have a scratch on you.
Now. Call 1-800-251-1533 toll-free, and it will be delivered discreetly to your home. Get results using the safe, all-natural alternative, NRX.
Owners, trainers, breeders, farms, equineline.com.
Single purple pills uncensored. M&M and D12 in Fish on demand, pay per.
You talked about the political pundits each saying that looking for blame in some cases.
Pittsburgh federal troops were called in by the governor of Pennsylvania to restore order. More violence followed. At least 25 people died and scores were injured. Some of the victims were children.
It's one of the surprising things about American history that America has perhaps one of the most violent traditions of labor unionism of any industrial country.
While standing with them to face the challenges of today. Louisiana Farm Bureau and Louisiana farmers, we're bringing it all to the table.
From the Great Plains, this Pioneer tractor is our classic giant for February. Let's go to Artesian, South Dakota.
This is the 1910 3060 Pioneer tractor built at the Winona Pioneer Tractor Works at Winona, Minnesota. They incorporated in 1910 and started building tractors in June and July of that year. The tractor presently that I have is supposed to be the 7th one built at that factory. They pretty much built a lot of road equipment. They were in the construction equipment, the large road builders equipment. They specialized in large tractors.
Cisco reflect with the Hunt Ranch quality you've come to expect. Hunt Ranch, a proud sponsor of RFD TV.
What are you doing? You're scaring me.
Welcome to the Post Kitchens.
It just came to me. Yeah, well, I see a large stack of papers on your desk. And I see you finishing them all before 5 o'clock.
On to.
Fascinating things about this that most people wouldn't realize is right at the bottom is a
drove up to the house. It seemed like.
I took you to the cleaners. You've been had, big boy. Don't you get it?
19th century Venetian.
Ah, well, said Twain, I am a great and sublime fool, but then I am God's fool, and all his work must be contemplated with respect.
We are very glad that you are healthy and safe, and we appreciate you coming in here and telling us what happened to you. We're very glad you're okay.
Thank you. Carol Maureen, thank you so much. Thank you. Good to meet you.
Thank you. I do want to point out again, and you just saw the slow motion video of that impact. American Airlines confirmed today it lost 2 aircraft in those incidents. American said the flights were Flight 11.
Lightened up and made that a very intense bright red, and then
out here. Now we're starting to make a little sense here. This is a lovely sort of French crackle finish coffee table, which I really like. It's also got a shelf down below.
Stands down.
Threat to the airport?
It's precautionary at this point.
Have you ever seen anything like this before in Los Angeles?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And what is going to be your role, the police department's role in this? What are you doing?
We're protecting the public. That's what our job is.
Will roads in and out of the airport be closed as well? Will people be able to get into the airport?
Right now, this thing is fluid. We're working as we go with the changes, so I couldn't give you a definite on anything right now.
How many police officers more or less
Thanks very much.
here in the airport on a regular day?
Other agencies involved, I couldn't give you an exact figure.
Right now there are other agencies?
Yes, ma'am. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
What time was it?
My name is Lieutenant Whitehead.
So this is what you're looking for.
That was Lieutenant Howard Whitehead of the LAX Police telling us again that just within the last 15 or 20 minutes, an order has come down, a command decision to evacuate the terminals at LAX. Up until this point, of course, flights were not being allowed in or out. Now they are evacuating all the terminals except for key personnel. Also here with me now is Lieutenant Colonel Al Van Cleef of the Salvation Army. You have the very difficult task of helping to coordinate the grief counseling. Can you tell me about the accommodations that are being made for family members of Flight 11, 77, and 175?
We have 6 grief counselors on site now, 2 of the teams ready. We're waiting word now from American Airlines. They are diligently working on the plans as far as a private location where the family will be received. As soon as we're aware of that, then they will make contact with us so our counselors can proceed to where family members will be arriving. We've done the same thing here in Los Angeles as well as San Francisco and Washington, D.C.
Very difficult day for you, sir. Thanks very much for joining us. That is the latest from Los Angeles. Aaron, back to you.
Frank, thank you. Frank Buckley in Los Angeles. We are in the midst of an extraordinary national tragedy, attacks in Washington and New York, attacks on airliners, the dimensions of which are not yet clear, but what is clear is that this is a day unlike any other. The worst fears of officials around the country, security, intelligence, military officials, political leaders, worst fears being realized, being played out in New York and Washington, 80 miles outside of Pittsburgh where a plane went down. Other planes have crashed. We don't know the circumstances precisely. We now have a report perhaps of another building here in New York that has collapsed. CNN producer Rose Arce is on the phone. Rose, what can you tell us?
Yes, there's another building very close to the World Trade Center that was hit by debris some time ago, and it appears to be on the verge of collapse. Also, that enormous plume of smoke that you see that's surrounding the building, there are suspicions that it's not all smoke, but that there's a gas leak within that smoke. And that has caused a tremendous amount of panic in this area. The police have been saying that they're now evacuating all of lower Manhattan, and you can see people moving north in a flood through these streets that are just filled with ash. You know, as you walk through the ash, you can see debris from inside the World Trade Center itself, a very, very eerie scene, pieces of paper from people's desks, office supplies, many, many blocks from the site of the actual explosion, where they now are fearing that there may be yet another explosion because of this potential gas leak.
Rose, thank you. Rose Arce, who's on the streets of Manhattan. Back to Jerry Hauer, who who ran the mayor's emergency response team, and I'm not sure I got the title right, but the essence is correct. When you all, after the 93 attack on the buildings, and you sat down and tried to redo a plan, which I assume happened, did you anticipate anything of this magnitude?
Well, we have plans in place in New York City for massive incidents, but an incident like this is very difficult to plan for, just because of the number of people that have been the number of responders that have been injured. There are
the responders, we mean police, fire,
EMS,
rescue, correct.
Right. There are literally hundreds of people coming from New Jersey. As you heard from the governor early, the National Guard will be activated to help with law enforcement to help seal the area. I know that FEMA will be activating their search and rescue teams to assist with going through the debris. This is going to be a long-term operation. It is going to be a very difficult one because, as you heard earlier, there's still a gas leak in the building, which is fueling this fire. And until the gas is turned off, that fire could burn for some time.
Has been canceled.
Crashed again, as we know, near Pittsburgh.
And we know of a second United plane. It was United Flight 175, a Boeing 767. That one left Boston at 8 o'clock this morning, bound for Los Angeles. The aircraft carried 56 passengers, 2 pilots, and 7 flight attendants, according to the airline. And the airline is not saying where that plane crashed.
So we've had 4 planes involved today. The two in New York that struck the World Trade Center towers, that ran right into the buildings. We had the one crash here in western Pennsylvania and the one Peggy just mentioned.
And there have been a lot of unanswered questions. And, you know, in a time of crisis like this, there is a lot of misinformation. So we're trying to be very careful about what we tell you today, but there has been concern that there may have been other planes hijacked. You know, we're hearing all kinds of things, but again, we are only going to tell you what we're getting confirmed to us.
Right, and there's a lot of speculation how all of this is tied together. Of course, something striking the Pentagon this morning after the attack in New York, that it could possibly all be connected, some type of terrorist mastermind plot of an attack on the United States. That is certainly a possibility. We do not have hard information on that right now.
Some of the stuff that I was listening to this morning, people were asking, asking questions about our intelligence community and how they could not have known that something like this was coming. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of scrutiny of the intelligence community after today.
As you may have heard, there were no threats called in, mailed in, anything. There was no indication there was going to be this attack in New York or in the Pentagon or the other two flights that were involved. And people were saying today, well, there's no specific threat to the USX Tower, the Frick Building, the other buildings that are being evacuated as a precaution. There were no specific threats made to the World Trade Center. Certainly a feeling of uneasiness that we all have right now is quite understandable.
And I'm sure there are plenty of people from this Pittsburgh area who today were in New York, or I know somebody who was in Washington for a meeting this morning at the Pentagon. And so that person is all right, by the way, or was all right, was able to contact his wife and was okay. But this story is just going to go on and on because we're going to have a lot of people from our area affected by this tragedy.
Absolutely. And we have Newland Archinall live downtown again for us. Newland with the latest there.
Well, just wanted to pick up on what Peggy was saying. We found out in our household that this tragedy has affected us. My husband lost a coworker this morning, was on the plane that struck the Pentagon. So, as you mentioned, it affects everyone. Even though it may not happen here in Pittsburgh, you probably know of someone somewhere. Anyway, as for what is going on here in downtown Pittsburgh, I do have some updated information. Really, don't come downtown. There's no need to. I just found out that Kaufman's, Lord & Taylor's, most of the major retailers are closing early. In fact, I went into Kaufman's, or tried to go into Kaufman's, to find out what was happening. The doors locked at 12 o'clock. All the workers are going to be sent home early today. There's no shopping, which was really sort of disappointing for a lot of the people here who simply can't get out of the city, and we're just trying to kill some time. A lot of folks have been waiting for PAT buses. Either the PAT buses are all full or they say no service. And so some of the PAT bus riders are getting a little upset, understandably, because they can't get on their buses and get home while they're watching so many of their coworkers leave. I tried to call PAT, but unfortunately, I guess from the sheer number and volume of cell phone service calls that the lines are all busy. So I hope to get that straightened out for some people. Also, the parking garages. There is literally a line in one parking garage that stretches 3 stories up. It is going to take quite a while, evidently, just to get out of the parking garage and then onto the streets, and things really aren't much better. I think I last talked to you about half an hour ago, and I was telling you how logjam things were, how crowded the streets were. Sometimes people were waiting, 20 minutes to get through one traffic light, one intersection, and it's still pretty much the case. So, if you're down here, you're just going to have to be patient. You're not going to get right out of the city today. So that is the latest from here. Also, I want to add that I did see Mayor Murphy leaving the city-county building about 15 minutes ago. I tried to grab him for an on-camera interview, but was told that he was headed over to the Emergency Operations Center on the other side of town, and that he would be issuing a statement from there very shortly. That is the latest from downtown. I'll send it back to you. Peggy and David.
All right, Newland, we're so sorry about your family, friend, and for all the people who have been touched by this horrible tragedy today.
Indeed. We're looking again at the top of your screen of the scene from downtown Lower Manhattan, New York City, where the 2 planes rammed into the 2 towers of the World Trade Center. The buildings later collapsed. The loss of life expected to be in the thousands, we are told officially now. We can assume that, given that 50,000 people on any given day work in the World Trade Center. and in Lower Manhattan, where the business district, the financial district, so many people on the streets there and in other buildings, and we're still trying to gauge the damage to the other buildings when both of those buildings collapsed. And that is a live shot from Somerset County, Peggy.
That where the United Airlines flight, went down around 10 o'clock this morning. You see the emergency workers on the scene, but as we heard from our Rick Earl, who was there really didn't look like there was much there. I know I had heard early that they were searching for survivors, but it certainly doesn't appear that anyone could have survived that. We heard an eyewitness say that the plane just went nose down, just almost straight into the ground.
Yeah, and the one tighter shot we saw there would certainly be an indication of that. Emergency helicopters flying above. Do we have Rick Earl with us live again? Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, David, do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. You're on, Rick.
Yeah, we just had a short briefing here from the state police, and he was joined by John Guerra from the FBI, and he has confirmed that this is definitely being treated as a crime scene. He said investigators are down there at this very minute. We've seen several dozen state police cars cruise into the scene. We have also just seen the National Guard has just arrived here. There's about 4 or 5 National Guard trucks here. They've just arrived here to help out in this investigation. And we are hearing at this point, earlier we heard there were about 90 people on board the plane. Right now we're getting reports that there were 38 passengers, 5 flight attendants, and 2 pilots on this United Airlines Flight 93. We understand that it was a 757 aircraft. Again, the witness accounts here saying that the plane appeared to just nosedive right into the ground. You saw that huge crater left in the old strip mine here. The plane apparently, when it hit on the nose, it flipped over and then careened into some trees. There was a huge ball of fire, a loud explosion. A number of rescue personnel raced to the scene, and when we asked them about survivors, they just told us it didn't look very good. And they said the largest piece of debris they found down there was about 5 feet. So that's the very latest here. Of course, we are waiting to hear from the state police. Again, they're briefing us about every 15 or 20 minutes. They're keeping us up to date with any new information that may come in. David and Peggy?
Okay, Rick. Thank you very much. Amazing scene there in Somerset County as all that's been going on has touched us very deeply here in western Pennsylvania. You think we can't be affected. We can be affected.
We've learned that today. In fact, this has really brought our country to its knees. This is affecting cities all over the country. Many federal and state office buildings closed all across the country, especially prominent tourist attractions, like we said, Disney World in Florida, the Space Needle in Seattle, the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, Knott's Berry Farm in Southern California, even ironically, the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles.
Yeah, there are being evacuations ordered at United Nations building in New York, the tallest skyscrapers, not surprisingly, in Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, Cleveland, Minneapolis. As we had a voluntary evacuation here at USX Tower and some other major buildings in downtown Pittsburgh. And as we look at this wire copy, Peggy, we're seeing just a heightened state of alert. Every possible thing you can think of, oil supplies, national security, I mean, it's police, law enforcement officials on tactical alert everywhere.
And I think that it's important to point out here that this shows that I know this is a horrible disaster, and what the terrorists would like to see is complete chaos. This shows what's happening in our country right now and how we're responding in cities all across the country, that there is some calm and cool heads behind this, helping us to respond as we should. This country has been prepared for something like this, and they are carrying out those plans now. Right. And so it is not chaos everywhere.
That's the plane striking, I'm sorry, Peggy,
yes,
one of the towers there in New York City at the top of your screen. That was the second of the two. I know, it's so difficult to watch that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And of course, as you know later, because of those, the severe trauma put on those buildings, 110 plus stories high, there you go, they collapsed. One tower and then the next. And people were around there, and emergency personnel certainly were around there, but some people had come to Lower Manhattan to get a look at the building that was hit by the plane. And, you know, they were in harm's way, of course, when both of those towers came tumbling down with devastating force.
Yeah.
Family Man.
To meet the kids right now. Great.
Kind of old Eddie and night here. I stayed over there 3 or 4 times.
Oh, but Eddie's mother likes to have you over there. She says you're such a good influence on Eddie.
$1946? Why? What happened? I don't know. I'm that somebody.
She felt it was the right thing to do for her and not to conform to any expectations of others.
Team were to create an introduction to Earth for any aliens that might come across the Voyagers.
Throw a bullet at you.
Double take. Rated
100 miles an hour, the sort of speed that one might expect to see cruise missiles traveling across the horizon at, burning with a white glow coming from their tails rather than a yellow glow. The fire on the horizon that we can see from here burning furiously now. Perhaps it would be accurate at this stage to suspect that there was a fuel dump that's been hit by the way that it's burning, flames leaping, and that fuel dump must be perhaps 5 to 8 miles from where I am. Flames leaping up from that fuel dump now leaping up right into the air. It was a low-burning fire before, but it's now really increased in its ferocity, perhaps indicating that it is a fuel dump. Looking across the rest of the city, that fuel dump, perhaps the only big fire we can see at this time. From our vantage point here at the Kabul Intercontinental Hotel that overlooks the whole of the city of Kabul, that is in a basin surrounded by mountains, the whole city is laid out in front of us. The gunfire that was coming up from the city seems to have subsided for now. We're not hearing any more detonations at this moment. And as I say, the fire on the horizon really burning furiously at this time, flames leaping way up in the air this moment. Joey?
Nick, if you can talk to us a little bit about your circumstance. It is 6 o'clock in the evening here in Atlanta. It must be quite late at night there in Kabul.
Indeed, 2:30 in the morning here, Joey. We're eight and a half hours ahead of East Coast time in the United States. And it was about 5 hours ago that the foreign minister of Afghanistan, Wakil Ahmed Mutawakil, briefed journalists. I hear more detonations going off now. He said that the Taliban had not taken precautions against the possibility of there being an air attack against Afghanistan. He said because it was not necessary. The Taliban spiritual leader, Mullah Omar, had also made a statement saying that they felt Osama bin Laden wasn't responsible for what had happened in the United States. He said his country was a peaceful country. He wanted it to be at peace, and he wanted peace in other countries around the world. Certainly what we're seeing in Kabul these early hours of this Wednesday morning is very far from peace. Certainly multiple explosions happening in and around the city. There is a front line about 50 miles north of the city where the Taliban are fighting a battle against the
divisions, the battalions now, just waiting for us to pick them up and bring some more guys down here. It's a matter of transportation now.
Trey, they began assembling here at 11 in the morning. They're well prepared. They have over 3,000 hamburgers, 10,000 hot dogs, and over 100,000 bottles of water to help keep the troops here fresh.
Kelly, I'm not sure anybody can really answer this question considering the devastation continues to unfold in Manhattan, but do we know how long they'll be using Shea as the staging ground?
Well, nobody could give me a definite answer on that, but they did say easily it's through the night and into tomorrow morning.
What about an indication as to how many firefighters will be going in and out of there as this thing continues to progress?
Well, right now there are 350 firemen here, most of them volunteer. There are 175 emergency medical technicians and 50 New York City Police Department members.
Very much.
You're welcome.
The National Football League has made no decision as to Sunday's Week 2 game. Spokesman Joe Brown saying no decision will be made today and that the league will gather information and speak to several parties within the next 24 to 48 hours. Now, in times of national tragedy, there is for the National Football League always an echo of that Sunday in 1963 when the league did decide to go forward and play a complete schedule of games 3 days after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. This national trauma is very different, but the trivial question of sport remains the same. We bring in Chris Mortensen this evening from Atlanta. Hello, Mort.
Hey, Bob. Yeah, and I spoke with Art Modell, the owner of the Baltimore Ravens, who was then the owner of the Cleveland Browns in 1963, and he reminded that he was at odds with Commissioner Rozelle at that time and how Pete really regretted that. Art said this is a different tragedy, obviously. Last time it involved the president. He does think it is appropriate for Commissioner Paul Tagliabue and the league owners to look to Washington, to President Bush, to take a cue on how it should proceed this week. Should it proceed normally? And obviously, this is not just affecting executives, owners. It also has an impact on the league players and coaches as well.
So love the easy opening can.
In Kabul, then flames broke out. The CNN reporter indicated that this is a missile attack on Kabul. We have no independent confirmation of that. Yes, after the attack on the U.S. embassies in East Africa in 1998, the United States responded fairly quickly with missile attacks in a remote area of Afghanistan where it was said that U.S. intelligence had some indication that maybe Osama bin Laden or some of his units in operation were. But as these explosions light up the night sky in Kabul, the footage shown to you, courtesy of CNN, about flashes and flames in the Afghan capital, the source of those flames and explosions unknown. Now, incoming missiles, unquote. This all...
the immediate search